I'm Crystal from Mrs. Fortenberry's third period class, and this is my teacher, Mrs. Brinkley, my allied health teacher class, and we're just going to ask you some questions about the male reproductive system. Okay, what is the male reproductive system?
What is the male reproductive system? Well, the male reproductive system is a set of organs that come together to produce the male sex cell, which is, we know as sperm, and sperm helps along with the egg in producing new life. So it's how humans regenerate, it's how it's how humans reproduce, and how, of course, babies are formed and things like that. So it plays an equal role as does the female reproductive system in producing new life.
Okay. Describe the organs of the male reproductive system.
Well, there are several organs of the male reproductive system, and they do different functions, but they all work together as kind of a trail. And I'll go through that trail with you all to show you how everything is produced and how everything works together. So if you look at the picture in the book here, the first thing we have is the testes. And it's the almond-shaped organs, and this is where sperm, the male sex cell, is produced. And then you have a sac that these testes, the males have two testes, and you have a sac that these testes are held in called the scrotum. And the scrotum provides a safe environment, and it provides a housing place for the testes, and it helps control body temperature, because for sperm to be viable and for sperm to continue to live, you have to have certain body temperatures and things like that. From the testes, branched off, you have the epididymis. And in that area, this is where sperm is stored. And if you were to stretch out the epididymis, and you can probably see it better on this picture than you can on this, but branched off of the testes, you have this tube called the epididymis. And if you were to stretch that out, it actually would measure 20 feet. So that's just a interesting fact. From those, you have two tubes on each side that go up, because the male reproductive system is mirrored on each side, and that's called the vas deferens. And this is where the sperm would travel up, and also it would mix with the fluid, mix with a different fluid that would help to produce semen. And so as these tubes go up, you see these what's called seminal vesicles. And this also adds additional fluid to the sperm, thus creating semen as well. And right before we continue to go down, you have a circular gland that surrounds what's called the urethra. Both a male and a female have a urethra, which is kind of your urinary tube where urine is expelled. And the interesting thing about males that's different from females, males ejaculate and urinate from the same area. So it all comes through the urethra, whereas a woman, she has a vagina and she has a urethra, which are two different canals. But in males, it's all one, it's the urethra. But surrounding this urethra, you have what's called the prostate gland. And that's this bulb-shaped gland. In this picture, it's cut. It's a side view, and it's kind of cut. But it surrounds the urethra. And you have different conditions that males can develop, like BPH, benign prostatic hypertrophy, which is when that prostate gland gets enlarged. And when it enlarged, what happens is it constricts and it squeezes on that urethra, preventing urine flow. It can cause men to have ejaculatory problems and things like that. So it all has to work together. But from those seminal vesicles, you have your ejaculatory ducts, and this is where the semen, now, as it will be called because it's now the sperm mixed with the fluid, will come down, and then it will join to the urethra until it's expelled out of the male primary organ, which is the penis. So it's kind of like a trail. It starts at the testes and it ends at the urethra coming out of the penis, out of the urinary meatus, which is the hole at the end of the penis where the sperm comes out of, or where the semen comes out of. So it all has to work together in order to first build the human sex cell or the male sex cell, and to where it has to mix with fluids until it becomes semen. And then once that semen is met with the female reproductive system, it continues to travel along to where the sperm would thus swim in the female environment or reproductive system and form new life.
Okay. What are some STDs? Well, how do they affect the male reproductive system?
STDs and how do they affect the male reproductive system? There are several STDs. Some of the main common two, you have gonorrhea and chlamydia, which unfortunately Mississippi has one of the highest rates of. We rank number 2 and number 3 in those. Generally, when a person has gonorrhea, they also have chlamydia. These two are caused by bacteria, which means they are treatable and curable STDs. It can cause, gonorrhea can cause a discharge. Both chlamydia and gonorrhea can cause an abnormal discharge, sometimes white, sometimes yellowish, greenish discharge in males. If the male were to pass that on to the female, she could thus become infertile and sterile, as to where she can't have children anymore. And it can cause different reproductive systems, and it can be cured, like I said before, with simple antibiotics. The next, one of the next STDs that can be gotten is syphilis. And syphilis, it is highly curable, but a lot of people don't know that. Syphilis comes in 4 stages. On the first stage, you get what's called a canker, and it's just like a little sore that can appear on the penis. And after a couple weeks, that will disappear. And after that disappears, the male will have a copper-colored skin rash on the skin. And then that also, after a couple of weeks, will disappear. And then once that has disappeared, internal damage begins. The person generally thinks that they're cured of it or it went away on its own. The male may continue to pass it on and not know he's passing it on because all of the symptoms are cured at that point. But that's when the internal damage is being done. And then the 4th stage is kind of when people succumb to that internal organ damage. But the thing about syphilis, it can easily be cured with a shot of penicillin, a dose of penicillin, as long as you've had it less than a year. Even if you've had it more than a year, it still can be cured with several doses of penicillin. A negative thing is syphilis can be passed on to babies and cause birth defects in the reproductive system in children if the male is joined with the female to reproduce. And then, of course, you have AIDS and HIV that attacks the whole immune system and the whole body itself. One that's not highly known is trichomoniasis. That one also is caused by a type of bacteria, and it can not only be passed through sexual contact, but it can be passed through everyday surfaces like toilet seats and things like that. But that can cause infertility and different discharges. But in males, this one's very peculiar, that in males it causes no symptoms. Males usually have no symptoms with trichomoniasis, and therefore they can pass it on to several females or pass it on unknowingly. So it's very important that males get checked for different STDs and things, because it can affect the reproductive system and the reproductive process in bringing new life into the world.
Okay, well, thank you for your time, Ms. Brinkley.
You're welcome.